Now, the Roy Wilkins Award is a very special one. In fact, the last time it was given out was 1993, the last year flat tops were in style. So you know those recipients put in some work. Please welcome back Chairman Leon W. Russell to present this year's special honor.
Thank you again, Afion. I'm very happy to be back this evening to present the NAACP Roy Wilkins Civil Rights Award, named in honor of a leader who spent more than 4 decades at the NAACP, including 22 years at the helm of the organization during the early pivotal years of the modern civil rights movement. Roy Wilkins helped organize the historic 1963 March on Washington, participated in the Selma to Montgomery marches in 1965, and the March Against Fear in Mississippi in 1966. During his tenure, the NAACP played a leading role in most of the civil rights victories of the 1950s and 1960s, including passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. He firmly believed in change through nonviolent agitation, litigation, and legislative means. This year marks the first time since 1993 that we present the Roy Wilkins Civil Rights Award to a group who will join the ranks of past recipients, including Justice Thurgood Marshall, Mr. Cesar Chavez, Representative Ron Dellums, and Reverend Jesse Jackson. There is no individual or group more deserving of this year's award than the more than 50 Texas state legislators representing the Black, Mexican American, and Democratic caucuses who faced possible arrest when they walked out of the State House and Senate chambers in order to deny a quorum that would allow their legislature to adopt some of the most repressive anti-democratic voting measures since the Jim Crow laws of the early days of the previous century. They left for Washington, D.C., and remained there for more than 30 days. They walked the halls of the nation's capital, making the point that Congress must protect voting rights by passing the John R. Lewis Voting Rights Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. They wanted the country to be aware of the threat to democracy posed by the efforts of the states like Texas, making it harder, especially for Black, brown, and indigenous people to exercise their right to vote. Let's take a look at why we are honoring these social justice warriors.
They do things big in Texas. Last year, the country and the world witnessed another historic fight for voting rights when the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, the Mexican American Legislative Caucus, and the Texas House Democratic Caucus walked out of a special legislative session on the eve of a major vote on the so-called Voting Integrity Bill.
What it's going to take for us to be able to be Americans in this country? I am an American and I want to vote.
The Voter Integrity Bill proposed to further limit the ability to vote in a state that already had some of the most restrictive rules in the country.
I stand to fight in today for it. I stand to fight for it until I can't fight no more.
In 2021, late Sunday night on Memorial Day weekend, Texas legislative Republicans decided to push their voting bill through by suspending the rules. When the chair of the Texas House Democratic Caucus found out, he sent a text. Members, take your key and leave the chamber discreetly. Shortly before the midnight deadline ended the regular legislative session, the Democrats left the building and began their urgent fight to save the Texas vote. This unexpected move stunned the Republicans and halted the oppressive law. The Texas governor continued the effort to dismantle representative democracy. More than 30 days after the walkout, he called for a special legislative session. And again, Democratic members walked out, but this time was different.
Today, more than 50 Democratic members of the Texas House left Austin and left Texas. Not because we want to. It breaks our heart that we have to do it. But we do it because we are in a fight to save our democracy.
With help and support from the national and Texas NAACP, they boarded 2 charter flights and flew to Washington, D.C. For the length of the Texas special session, the members walked the halls of the nation's capital. They attended hearings and met with members of the U.S. Congress and Vice President Kamala Harris. They joined voting rights protests to advocate for federal voting laws and to make the world aware of the race-based voting barriers Texas wanted as law. After the Texas governor called a second special session, enough members returned to the state. A quorum was reached, and a voting rights bill reflecting the pre-Juneteenth era of Texas passed.
And we broke quorum not once, but twice in what I believe is a just cause, an American cause.
But the work of the multiracial and intergenerational Texas Democratic members is not finished. Their powerful fight as defenders of democracy and equal voting rights continues. You have the power. Use it. Vote like your ancestors fought to get it.
For standing up to their colleagues and for fighting for justice, I am pleased to present the Roy Wilkins Civil Rights Award to the members of the Texas House Democratic Caucus, the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, and the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. Thank you for your courage and your conviction. We know the fight continues.
Thank you to Chairman Leon Russell, President Derek Johnson, and the NAACP for this tremendous honor. Texas House Democrats have fought hard to protect the freedom to vote, as Republicans have worked to undermine our democracy. Our state has a long, ugly history of suppressing the vote and discriminating against voters of color. We're seeing active vote suppression happen right now across our state as vote-by-mail ballots are being thrown out. Our state also has a proud history of brave Texans fighting for civil rights, like Barbara Jordan and Lyndon Baines Johnson. The 57 members of the Democratic Caucus who broke quorum to protect the sacred right to vote stand on the shoulders of giants. We are proud to continue the fight the leaders of the civil rights movement started and continue doing whatever it takes to safeguard the freedom to vote.
On behalf of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, thank you, NAACP, for this honor. We'd also like to thank the Texas NAACP for providing crucial research and guidance when we broke quorum last summer to protect the right to vote. For we know that when we use our collective voice, we are stronger. Elections impact every fabric of our lives, including the types of roads we drive on, the cost of housing, job opportunities, and even what our children learn in school. So join us in protecting the freedom to vote by exercising your power to elect candidates who reflect your community and your interests. Thank you.
Good evening and buenas noches. I'm the chairman of the Mexican American Legislative Caucus of the Texas House of Representatives, and our caucus is the oldest and largest Latino legislative caucus in the country, with over 40 members representing millions of Texans. On behalf of our members, it's my honor to accept the Roy Wilkins Civil Rights Award. This past year, we leaned on the shoulders of giants like Roy Wilkins as we confronted the latest sweeping tide of disenfranchisement that was fueled nationally by the big lie. I'm proud that we took the voice and the will of our gente, our people, from the Texas legislature to the halls of Congress. Juntos, which means together, we're going to continue to lock arms and protect our democracy. Thank you.
Congrats to the Texas House Democratic Caucus, Texas Legislative Black Caucus, and the Mexican American Legislative Caucus. We need more elected officials to take a stand and go the distance.